Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Moral of our first story, if your happiness is dependent on a piece of property you don't own, might want to go ahead and buy it if possible. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Neighbor goes to developer to enforce a rule to protect their view. It backfires. This story isn't me, but my girlfriend's parents. They were going to build a house in a new development in a lot that was in front of their to-be neighbors. The lot's on a hill, so it's in front of the neighbors but below them. The neighbors decided they wanted to build a one-story rancher on the lower part of the lot instead of building something like a two-story on the higher side of the lot. They assumed that whoever was going to build in front of them would only build a one-story themselves, which would keep their view unobstructed. Having a great view is apparently very important to them and a big selling point on the lot. Her parents start to build their two-story house on their lot with tall, peaked gables. When the neighbors realize their view will indeed be obstructed, they offer to buy the lot off her parents. Her parents give them the price of the lot, which had increased in value since it was originally purchased, plus the cost of the materials already purchased for the build. They waited for a response but didn't get one, so they just continued on with their build. A month or two later, the neighbors respond to the offer saying they'll accept it. By this time, of course, more time and money has been put into the build, so her parents told them they can still buy the lot, but the price is increased. The neighbors reject the offer. In this new development, all houses are required to have a 2-foot overhang, but many of the homes haven't actually been following the rule, and the developers haven't been enforcing it. Her parents decided to also not follow the rule. The neighbors then go to the developer to remind them that her parents need to have 2-foot overhangs, thinking that it would decrease the pitch of the roof, meaning the gables wouldn't be so high. The developers tell her parents to make sure they have the 2-foot overhangs. Her parents go to the architect to find a way to keep the tall gables they wanted, while also having the 2-foot overhangs. The architect tells them to just raise the roof 2 feet to create the 2-foot overhang, so the angles on the roof won't be impacted at all. Her parents keep building with these new specs. The developers approach her parents to inquire about the overhangs and if their roof was impacted at all. The look on his face when her parents told him that they just raised the whole roof by 2 feet was priceless. The neighbors avoided her family the entire 5 years they lived there. How stupid. I'm going to build my house low on my lot, and the new people will, of course, only build a one-story home. WTF. And our second story. Drunk dude gets arrested. This story happened a few years ago when I was working as loss prevention at a big box retailer. I watched this guy grab a bundle box, which at the time came with a laptop and a few accessories. He takes it away from the computer section and into an aisle where he proceeds to open the box and pull things out. After seeing this, I alert the other employees and have someone go talk with them. As soon as an employee gets there, he picks it up and heads towards the exit, which is where I'm at now. When he gets to me, I ask for a receipt, and of course he doesn't have one. He's very drunk and has a thick foreign accent. He tells me this is his, and he brought it in for repair because he ran over it with his car. I say, what the hell, and play along. I send him to tech support. He gets there, talks to the employee at the desk, and puts the box on the counter. The employee takes out the laptop with a puzzled look and sees it's perfectly fine and brand new. Tech support gives it back to him, and again he tries to leave. I take the box out of his hands and ask if he has anything else that doesn't belong to him. He lifts his shirt all the way up and then almost drops his pants to prove he's not taking anything else. I'm trying to hold in my laughter, and everyone in the store is watching this guy with amazement. He pulls his shirt back down and his pants up and runs into the parking lot. I follow at a brisk walk as he's a short, heavy-set guy and doesn't run fast at all. He makes it to an SUV that's already running, and before he opens the driver door, turns around, sees me, and runs out of the parking lot and straight across a 4-lane, very busy highway. Cars are slamming on their brakes, and he somehow makes it across uninjured. Cops arrive later. I tell them what happened and point them to the vehicle that's still running in the parking lot. They check the vehicle. They find the wife asleep in the passenger seat and 2 young kids below the age of 10 in the back seats. The guy eventually returns and is arrested. And our next story. Won't turn down the radio? I'll cut the power. My first apartment was a little crappy one-room efficiency on the 4th floor. Turnover in the place was pretty high. Quality of the tenants was pretty low. At one point, someone moved in below me who just could not sleep without the radio on. If he'd been using a simple clock radio next to the bed, we wouldn't have had a problem. Unfortunately, he decided he had to use his stereo, which had the speakers mounted over his bed. Our rooms were essentially identical, so the layout of the radiator and everything else meant we had our beds in the same place. Since his speakers were on the wall, almost up to the ceiling, this made the floor conduct the sound right through my bed frame. Even if I couldn't hear the music while standing up, I sure as hell could hear it when my head hit the pillow. Since the building manager was totally useless, I complained to the guy myself. As you can imagine, it went nowhere. After 2 weeks straight of not getting any sleep, I had an evil idea. Each apartment had its own electric bill, so each apartment was on its own circuit. Each floor had a room with all the meters for that floor, as well as a breaker box for each apartment. Each breaker box only had one switch in it, but it guaranteed nobody flipped the wrong switch when they overloaded their circuit. I could have my TV, computer, and lights on at the same time with no problem. If my fridge kicked in at that point, I was still fine. However, if I was running my microwave with all of that on and the fridge kicked in, my breaker would trip and I'd have to go down the hall to the breaker room to reset it. Now, this guy had a very regular schedule, so his fridge did too. It would kick on every day between 1:45 and 1:55 in the morning. I could tell because the volume on his music would go down for a half second when it kicked in and go up for a half second when it stopped. Having noticed this from the 2 weeks of no sleep, I started going down to his floor and standing by the door to the breaker room and waiting for his music to do its little down drop. As soon as that happened, I'd hit his breaker and run up to my apartment. He'd wake up later on, fix the breaker, fix his clock, and go back to sleep. By this time, I would have conked out and his music wouldn't bother me. I kept this up for 3 straight weeks. He ended up getting thrown out a month later for not paying his rent. The best part was that the breakers were old, crappy, and cheap. You couldn't tell that they'd been flipped, as opposed to tripped by overload like new ones. Edit, clarifying a few points. I'm a night owl. I often don't go to bed until 1 or 2 a.m. He kept the music on until he got up at 6:15. Getting to sleep is my problem. Once I'm already asleep, I may as well be dead. I can't stand the feeling of stuff in my ears, so I can't wear earplugs. My auditory canals are small, so I can't use earbuds. I move a lot in my sleep, so headphones would get broken. For those wondering why I didn't move the bed or rearrange the room, no space. If I moved the bed away from the wall, I wouldn't have been able to get the door open. If I turned the bed, I wouldn't have been able to get to the bathroom without stepping on the bed. Turning the bed would have also blocked the heat from the radiator. Swapping the bed with the bureau, which had my TV on it, would have made the kitchen inaccessible. I'm 80% sure he lost his job thanks to my messing with him, thus getting him kicked out for not paying rent. And our last story. HOA member harassing us for moving in through the wrong entrance. Just moved to a new condominium. Our movers arrived a day early with no warning. We were unable to have the truck at the loading zone in the back of the building due to 2 cars being illegally parked there. The elevators are the same from either entrance, and it's actually quite shorter distance from the front. We had reached out earlier to the HOA with no response regarding the loading zone, so we proceeded from the front. The move went pretty smoothly, except for our lovely new neighbor who's on the board. He stood outside telling us we'll be fine for not using the back entrance to move, and checked in supposedly 3 times to see if we were moving the truck. We couldn't convince the driver, who was an angry man himself, who already stressed me out dealing with the early delivery. HOA narc told us it'd be a $10,000 fine because we could have broken the front doors. Everything was fine. He then found our unit after we'd moved in while the movers were unpacking our furniture, told us we'd be fined because we'd ignored him 3 times while moving in. My husband was in a work call and flustered, and the 2 of them became argumentative. My husband asked him if he gets paid to enforce fines, and why would he follow us to our front door to scold us if he knows we'll be fined instead of just going through the board. We asked what unit he was, and he laughed and said, "I'm not telling you where I live." The HOA narc left in a huff, and we immediately called another HOA member who'd we been in contact with and on good terms. We reiterated our reasoning for going through the front entrance and apologized. He confirmed the narc neighbor had already emailed him about us, but told us not to worry, and that if we had any issues with this neighbor regarding the move, to let him know. So I'm feeling very positive about the situation, as on our end, we were very communicative and respectful and made an honest mistake due to issues with the loading zone and lack of feedback from the HOA beforehand regarding the possibility of a fine. But this neighbor has made our first day in our new home so toxic, I don't want to run into him ever again, and now he knows where we live in the building. I want to let the rest of the board know, as he'll inevitably try to escalate this, that he made us feel unsafe by following the movers to our unit. I don't understand how someone can be foaming at the mouth to make other people feel like they're criminals for not adhering to an HOA rule that was not communicated effectively or made easy to follow, the loading zone not being clear. While we moved, I met several other neighbors who were super nice. I got to help 2 elderly neighbors out with their groceries and finding their Uber, and introduced myself while apologizing to the movers, who weren't in the way of anyone to begin with. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.